Okay, so I'm gonna record this intro now so that it can be included in all of my future videos. What I say, unless I am reading scripture or directly quoting a prophet, is my opinion and my opinion alone. I might follow the archaeological evidence or the science that exists, but it is mine and it is my opinion. It's not the church's opinion, it's no one else's. It's just mine. So this little clip here will go in front of every other video I make so that people can't say that I'm misrepresenting the church. Okay. So this video is about modesty and cultures. So our modern culture in the US is what brings this up to question for most people. But then people talk about places like Africa, where there's tribes, or South America, where there's tribes, and there's women that don't wear any clothes, right? They don't wear tops, or things like this. Now, these are outdated understandings of groups of people. Those tribes, guess what? As soon as they were introduced to t-shirts, guess what happened? As soon as they were introduced to t-shirts, women and men both started wearing them all the time. They loved them. They loved being covered. They let their children run around naked, sure. But I let my son run around naked until he was 2. So who cares? I didn't start making him wear clothes as far as the normal clothing styles until he was around 3 or 4. And yeah, now I'm working on making sure that he's not lounging around the house in just his underwear. Because our house is kept very warm. But he's very good about making sure that he puts on pants when I ask him to, which is first thing he does when he wakes up is like, okay, put on some pants. Modesty in dress. Guess what? When groups of peoples that have been immodest in dress have learned about other types of clothing, they add those clothings to their attire. So, for example, those tribes in Africa or those tribes in South America that run around without shirts on for women and just walk around topless, they are mostly extinct now as far as that culture. That point of culture identity disappeared when they were introduced to t-shirts. Why? Because the women very readily accepted them. Because the reason they did what they did was because clothing for the tops of women was hard to come by. It was hard to make. So they just didn't make it. Because they didn't have to make it for men. So there was no reason to struggle to make it for women. Because again, it was hard to make because each woman is endowed differently. But when they were introduced to t-shirts, which are loose-fitting coverings, right, that cover that area, They readily accepted them, took them, and adopted them into their culture. And now most of those women that used to walk around without tops walk around with t-shirts on. The men do too. They learned and understood that what they were doing, or they already knew what they were doing, wasn't acceptable. It wasn't okay, but they didn't have a choice. They were without that. They were without the capabilities of making clothing that covered the tops of women, or it was difficult to make the tops of women, and so it was easier to go without. But when t-shirts were introduced, when clothing that could be readily available to cover them was introduced into their culture, they readily accepted it and adapted their culture to match it. Why? Because of modesty. It is modest to stay covered. Now, do they bathe naked? Probably. As far as swimming, yeah, they probably go swimming naked. But again, those items of coverage have not yet been introduced into their culture. And women's swimsuits are horrible. People act like swimming is different than any other time of the year. Or any other time of the day or week, right? Swimming's different. I mean, and it is slightly different. But, again, I have no qualms against an actual bikini. As it was invented in 1955 or whatever it was, which covered the full area. Basically, it was granny panties and large and a bra, a full bra, right? That's basically what the bikini was when it was first invented. Most people who have qualms with bikinis don't have qualms with that. They have qualms with the string bikini, the G-string bikini, the high-rise bikini, or high-cut bikini, which is cut so that it goes up and over the hip, right? But then it goes in the back and it's a thong, right? Regular thong bikinis. This is what most people who have issues with bikinis, as far as modesty is concerned, have issues with. They don't have issues with regular bikinis, generally. But again, try finding an original style bikini nowadays. Good luck. You're not going to find one. Why? Because modesty has taken a back seat in Western society. Do I condone women's swimsuits the way they are? No. One pieces are near impossible to find nowadays, but I could care less about one pieces. I want something that offers coverage that does not remove imagination. Men's swim trunks don't remove imagination. A Speedo does, and I take issues with Speedos. I think women's swimsuits should be more loose-fitting. Make them more comfortable for women. Because as they are now, I know they're not comfortable. Because I've had my sisters, my wife, I've had friends all tell me women's swimsuits are uncomfortable. So I say we give them a more comfortable swimsuit. Something looser. Anybody have a problem with that? They can fight me over it. as long as it's modest. Because I can guarantee that today's women's clothing isn't comfortable. At least a lot of it. Sure, it shows off their figure, but you can do that in a lot of ways without them being uncomfortable. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.